Okay.
Hello, thank you for joining us for our presentation. Today we are going to be focusing on a study that we are conducting in our city. It's named Forming Bonds, a New Social Innovation Perspective for İZMİR Living Lab Experience. I am Gecer Sargın, and we will be presenting this Living Lab experience with my colleague Karakaya Ayalp, who is the director for this project.
Hello, everyone. I am Karakaya, and I am the director of İZMİR, part of a scientific research project entitled A New Perspective on the Process of Adaptation of Urban Refugees, a social innovation experiment aimed at building inclusive cities. What we are going to present is a part of this project, one of the work packages, findings of one of the work packages of this scientific research project. And the project is funded by TÜBİTAK, the Scientific and Technological Research Council of Turkey. What we are going to present you is the findings of Urban Living Lab experience in İzmir. Our project, of which acronym is POT-A, Pots of Acculturation, is located in Istanbul, İzmir, and Hatay. And what we are doing is an urban living lab experience as a living together experience in İzmir. Now, during the presentation, my colleague will continue, and she will continue with legal legislation for refugees in Turkey right now.
Turkey is a party to Geneva Convention that was signed in 1951. In 1967, Turkey has formed a geographical limitation for Geneva Convention, and the first arrival of the asylum seekers from Syria came to Turkey in 2011. In 2014, a temporary protection status for Syria originated refugees were introduced. For adaptation and inclusion, there were several activities conducted by several entities. First of all, activities with directors of migration management, and their main attitude is to control and security, and their contribution is the distribution of the salaries provided by the European Union funds. The second party is the activities by local governments. The main attitude is the service providing, and its contributions are in kind. The activities by the initiatives are mainly focused on adaptation and inclusion, and their contribution are supports in many ways, like psychological support, mental support, and so on. So where do we stand here? This study is mainly focusing on a social innovation, aiming to build an inclusive city by creating a living together experience in form of an urban living lab. To formulate this living lab, we introduced two methods. The physical space where people may gather, named Ada, meaning island, and the virtual space where people can be socially interact via social media apps that is created for this project, named Adapter, meaning adapter. Today we are going to be focusing on the actual physical place, and we won't be talking about the app. So what is a living lab? A living lab is usually used for technological innovations, and recently for social innovations also. And it provides different practices, and its methodology is through technological innovations. The urban living lab experience that we are searching for is more likely to migration lab experiences. So we want to introduce you to these three migration labs that are reference for our study. First of all, the migration lab is the activity diversity of the migration lab is introduced. Second one is the immigration policy lab, and this is for the policy formation for governmental institutions. And the third one is the Migrant Integration Lab, which is innovation through art, and which is very close to our project. So why we chose a living lab method? Refugees and immigrants are usually densely populated in certain areas at the hosting countries. By transforming environments, they reflect their different features to form the local community. This is called the appropriation of space, and this appropriation process is also transforming our cities, thus providing a path of acculturation for this study. Urban Living Lab in İzmir is situated in Basmane district, which is a very old part of the city and is the main entrance to the ancient city. It has also a district called Gates solely for this reason. Hence, the first comers to İzmir prefer settling in here because not only it offers a cheap place to stay, but also it is located at the central area of İzmir, and it offers daily working opportunities, especially for whom didn't or couldn't get legal working permits. Our living lab setup consists of different parties. The first party is the Turkish citizens, and we have conducted some surveys with Turkish citizens, and then in-depth interviews with the urban refugees are conducted. We also had focus group meetings and interviews with the public institutions, initiatives, and international organizations. We were focusing on examination of local initiatives and examination of world examples for reference of our study. In İzmir Urban Living Lab, the participants are all voluntary, and they are both consist of Turkish citizens and Syrian refugees. And the duration of the ateliers lasted for 3 months, and 10 ateliers were held. Here you can see the details of the ateliers and their titles. During these 10 weeks, we have formed a program constituted of ateliers for capacity building, such as Rights and Laws Atelier, Creative Drama Atelier, and Entrepreneurial Capacity Atelier. Also, we formulated ateliers for cultural interaction, such as Mapping Immigration Stories Atelier, Design Atelier, and Kitchen Atelier. And also the last category was the urban interaction ateliers, such as cognitive mapping, İzmir Bay Trip, and City Atelier, İnciraltı City Forest Trip, and Agora of Smyrna Trip, which were usually consisting of trips throughout the city. There are some quotes and pictures from our living lab ateliers. As I mentioned before, we have conducted 10 ateliers which have different activities restored in them. The first one is also, of course, introduction to project and getting to know each other. And the second atelier was also about getting to know each other and getting to know each other's migration stories, focusing on that we are all migrants that are sharing at the same space for a specific time. And migration stories are really very similar in every society, and that we can sing the same songs in other languages. Next, as I mentioned before, the ateliers were for cultural interaction took place as cognitive mapping, and some capacity building ateliers also, like rights and law ateliers took place. The key findings of these ateliers was to understand the fundamental rights and status, and learning the legal support mechanisms, and the cognitive mapping findings were the perception of the urban skyline and the establishment of relations with urban spaces, and to form a connection between the participants and the city. Next, we also held some fun activities, including Kite Fest in the İnciraltı City Forest and script writing and creative drama ateliers. And we followed with entrepreneurial capacity atelier to find entrepreneurship and learning cooperation through co-production. And design atelier was held by Fırat Neziroğlu, who is a very important weaving artist. And the key findings of this atelier was to produce original designing skills and to transform the designs into a product using waste materials and to create a co-production and co-creativeness. The kitchen atelier and the Agora of Smyrna trip atelier was our two last atelier workshops. The kitchen atelier provided us to meet at the same table, as well as co-production and co-creation. And Agora of Smyrna trip showed us that our city which we live in is a very old city, and the recognition of the city from Smyrna to İzmir is also very important, and to develop awareness of archaeological sites, which is also located at their neighborhoods. So it is important to understand the characteristics of the sites that they were living in and connecting to the site and creating a sense of belonging. After these living lab experiences, we had an evaluation process. We would like to share some quotations that the participants gave us through this evaluation process. There were some very touching quotations, my husband learned to take care of children when I'm here, and some prejudices were overcome by these ateliers. Like after coming to a couple of family integrated activities, my mother, who is very prejudiced against Syrians, started defending them against my father. And before Living Lab experience, I thought Syrians were our guests. Now I realize that they are our neighbors. This was also an important point in living together experience. Some of them also said that they were very prejudiced against such activities, and that they are happy to be a part of this process, and they thanked us dearly. So what we get out of this Living Lab experiences are some social innovation notes. These Living Lab experiences provided a vast information for social innovation, although it was a very short amount of time. It can be a test bed for further studies, and it created a living together experience, and it created a safe environment for different ethnicities to share experiences and become acquainted to each other. And to overcome the separation between these two parties, Living Lab provides a solid practice and a path of accumulation. Thank you for listening to our presentation. If you would like to participate into the discussions, we can provide you with some email and contact details of the authors. And here are some references that we used in this study. And if you are interested, please check out our web pages and social media accounts. Thank you for listening.
I would also thank you for listening. Have a nice day.
Thank you for joining us for our session. Goodbye.